Hi, folks. Thanks for joining me for this session. I'm really excited to share with you 5 big reasons why I think value stream thinking is the future of DevOps. And there's a lot to pack into this in half an hour. So I've got a link to an ebook at the end of the talk that's going to cover all this material in much more detail and add a lot of practical application that you can use to actually do this work and actually make an impact in your organization with value stream thinking. So first of all, let's dive right into what we're talking about here. I think 2021 really hasn't solved a lot of problems. We're probably seeing more than ever, but particularly the ones that I see over and over again and are really persistent and problematic are complexity, waste, and friction. And really that's going to be the subject of the talk is how do we tackle these problems? And what are good ways of addressing complexity, waste, and friction? So to give you a high-level overview of these 5 different factors that I'm talking about, we're going to start with beyond DevOps, looking beyond the boundaries of DevOps. We're going to look at building clarity and visibility. We're going to look at measurement and how to actually discover and tackle bottlenecks. We're going to look at value, how to boost value, how to see value in the flow of work. And then, of course, we're going to talk about flow. We're going to talk about productivity, velocity, scaling up, and making sure that everything that we do runs like clockwork wherever we can. With that being said, who am I to be talking about any of this? Well, I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I've started all the way in tech support, answering phone calls, fixing Windows problems, and through everything DevOps via build and release engineering, systems automation, cloud infrastructure, to CTO of a startup that scaled to over 60 people. And I moved into consulting a few years ago and really focused all my energy on value streams and this evolution of DevOps. So what are we talking about when I'm talking about beyond DevOps? Am I talking about what's next? Am I talking about looking outside the boundaries? Well, I'm talking about both. I think we've hit a stage with DevOps where it seems like everyone is trying to shoehorn their obsession into DevOps. And we just have this ever expanding compound word that means everything in the business. And I'm not sure that that is the way that we want to go. What we're really looking at with DevOps is development and operations, and that encompasses a lot of territory. But usually what happens when people talk about DevOps is they're talking about this tiny portion called the CI/CD pipeline. And people get obsessed with their automation because the automation is the fun part, right? I mean, it can make you tear your hair out, and it certainly did for me, but it's something that we can focus on. And I think we focus on it a little bit too much. And what happens when we focus on it too much is that we miss opportunities, right? Micro optimization, focusing too much on a tiny portion of the big picture means that we miss things. And what prevents us from missing things, and kind of the model that really works well to address this, is what is called the value stream. So the value stream really encompasses everything from when our work starts costing us money to when it starts making us money. But an easier way to think about that is really we start working on something to when our customers start using it. And this is helpful because what we're really talking about with DevOps a lot of the time, we have this automation focus and we're focused on the middle of the process, but we really have a lot of territory upstream and downstream. So we have all kinds of planning activities, approvals, consensus, project planning. Tons of things are happening before DevOps is even part of the process. And then after we ship to production, we might have marketing, we might have support, we might have sales and success. And so if we just look at DevOps, we're going to be missing a lot of those pieces of the puzzle. And I don't think the answer is really overloading DevOps and shoving all of these things into that definition. So the value stream is this concept that is coming from manufacturing and lean manufacturing specifically. It's been around for decades. And it really means this full end-to-end flow of value through an organization, which is fantastic because who needs a new term? Who wants to be inventing things all the time and reinventing the wheel? We've got really great learning that we can borrow from value stream history, and we can leverage a lot of the same tools and practices that have been working extremely well for the last 50 years in manufacturing in the software world. So I'm going to be bringing you a few of those lessons and ideas, and you can dig into that further if you're interested. So why is clarity important? Who cares? Everybody feels like they know what they're doing, right? It turns out that most transformation efforts, most improvement efforts, most of the things that fall apart in enterprises and startups is because of a lack of clarity. And it's not because we don't have enough tools. We have disagreements, we have misalignment, we have people who are confused. And it's challenging because it's very challenging to see the big picture. We have super complex organizations and we have constantly changing environments. And that introduces a lot of challenge in terms of gaining clarity. And what happens in most teams is that everybody has their own opinion, right? Everybody might feel clear about their area, but how many people are able to see the big picture and really make a good decision? And I'm sure you've seen this elephant example 1,000 times, but really what it means is that you've got all these disconnected nodes, right? You have every personality on your team, every person involved in a value stream, thinking about a separate part of that value stream. And what we have to do is tie all those perceptions together. We have to bring everybody under the same understanding so that we can get things done, so that we can deliver value to our customers. So the first part of that is getting out of our heads. We have to pull all these understandings that we all have separately out of our heads so that we can figure out what the difference is between all of them and bring them into alignment, right? We don't want to force these perspectives, but we need them out in the open so that we can make better decisions and bring them together and agree to head in a specific direction. So what does sharing the same view actually look like? And what does it have to do with value stream? So when we look at a value stream, it's the flow of value through the organization out to the customer. And we might have something blocking the flow. We always do, but sometimes it's more obvious than other times, right? Sometimes it's a huge problem and we're just dying to fix it. But whatever the bottleneck is, we want to be able to identify that and tackle it. And it means that because we all work collaboratively in giant teams, we have to agree on what that thing is. And we have to be able to focus our time and attention and resources at solving that bottleneck or alleviating that problem. So if we can share the same view of the value stream, we use a value stream as a means to get this information out of our heads, we can build this shared understanding and build clarity. And what that allows us to do is zoom out, zoom in. We can use the value stream to illustrate any level of the organization. It can be a 50,000-foot view of how Heinz makes ketchup, or we could zoom in and look at what is the manufacturing process of a single bottle of ketchup, or how do we make the labels to go on the bottles. So this ability to zoom out and zoom in means that we can dig into challenges. We can figure out, okay, well, if the issue's over here, what is it specifically that we want to target? So that ability to zoom out and zoom in and zoom out together is extremely powerful because now we're on the same page. We can all see what we're talking about. And that's kind of the first step. But how do we figure out where these bottlenecks are, right? So the value stream and value stream practices are really centered around not only seeing the value stream, but measuring the value stream. And that's the difference between a value stream and just a flow chart or a process diagram. Measurement is built in. So we always know what we can sort of quantifiably identify inside of the value stream, meaning that we can find bottlenecks based on measurement. So in other words, if I know the timing of everything that's happening in the value stream, I can see which things are taking longer than other things. And in this example here, we can see these two main areas that are outlined in bold and highlighted because they're taking up so much more time than the rest of the value stream. And that allows us to leverage a value stream map to target our efforts and target our efforts together. So what we're talking about here, the basic building blocks of a value stream and a value stream map are the steps involved in the process and the timing of those individual steps or activities, and then the delay timing or the wait timing in between activities. And oftentimes the delays are where we find the biggest opportunities. So you can see that highlighted in this hotspot that's outlined in pink. So this is providing us a degree of clarity about what we're doing and where we have the biggest challenges in terms of value delivery to our customers, which is pretty great. A lot of the time, you have 8 different opinions about what to focus on. Everybody's working sometimes in opposite directions. So the ability to see what really matters, which is the flow of value to our customers in quantifiable means, so ways that we can measure, means that we can target our efforts on what's really going to make a difference. If we tackle this 2-week hotspot, then maybe if we can drop it by 50%, we drop the entire lead time, the time that it takes to execute this value stream, close to half, which is pretty remarkable. So the way that we do this is measurement, right? So what are we talking about when we're talking about measurement? We're talking about step time, wait time, and the sequential flow of activities. And as I mentioned, this allows us to identify bottlenecks and zoom into where the bottleneck is really being created or made worse. So pretty common in teams, what we look at is a release process and a sprint process. And in most organizations, most enterprises, they've got this big, heavy release process. They might have sprints that work pretty well, but oftentimes when it comes time to batch up all the work that happened in the sprints and get it out to customers in a release, it can take a huge amount of time, and it's very challenging to figure out what was it? What takes so long? Why is this so hard? Because there's a lot of moving pieces involved. If we go back to this idea of being able to measure bottlenecks and identify bottlenecks, you'll see that we've got A and B here. Like A is actually taking a little bit longer than B, and we can see this because we can measure. So we've got 6 days, 5 days. This allows us to make a choice. Do we focus on QA testing, or do we focus on code review? Because maybe we're iterating through code review more often. So maybe instead of 5 days, it's actually more like 10 days because we've got rework and we're doing this multiple times. We can see this as a team and we can use it to make really good decisions about where to focus. But this is a very, very simplified example. A more realistic example gets a little bit more complex, and not in a way that's not useful. We're able to add a bunch of detail to this to measure different things. So you'll see these dots here in the value stream. That's what I use to depict different roles that are involved. So we can see where we have handoffs that maybe we're sending things back and forth throughout the value stream and we can consolidate things, or maybe we can run things in parallel. We're able to see these loop backs where we have a rework. So we can see that between development and code review, 80% of the time it gets kicked back to development. So maybe your coding standards aren't strict enough, or maybe we're missing a lint test, or maybe there's something that we can do to tackle that. But now we can see it because we've plotted it onto a value stream map. We can also measure different things like actual value. So we can look at what percentage of this process is delivering value. And that's really important because we can spend a short amount of time doing something that's not valuable and it's still a waste, or we can spend a lot of time on an activity that's delivering very little value, and then target opportunities to try and fix that. Maybe it's really hard to do the work that we're attempting to do in that step. So maybe we can look at making it easier and boost the value, boost the time that we're creating value in that step. Percent complete and accurate, you'll see this percent CNA. That's a quality measure. We can actually see where we're actually hitting specifications. So we can define quality throughout the value stream and say that if we expect it to be at a certain level and it's consistently below that level, we have a way of tackling that, right? We can look at, okay, well, is this spec realistic? What can we do to meet the spec more often? And this gets really interesting because you can sort of see these patterns emerge where you'll have value impacted by quality and you'll have quality impacted by value. And there's a lot of really interesting interplay between a lot of these measurements. So it gives us the ability to make really high quality decisions about what to automate, how to automate things, what kind of systems to implement. Maybe we need to leverage a new tool, but we're not doing that based on opinion, we're doing that based on data. So again, back to the CI/CD pipeline, it's only capturing a portion of the true value stream. And what that means is that we're not able to measure some of the most valuable things there are to measure in a process in software development. We're looking at software development and delivery by the DORA metrics, which are great measurements for overall performance. They're not the only measures, but if you were to try and capture them in your CI/CD pipeline, you're probably going to have a hard time, or you're going to have a CI/CD pipeline that's overloaded with a bunch of extra activities so that you can measure the true lead time that's involved. So what can we do with all this? Once we have this data, what does it allow us to do? So we can make decisions and target improvement efforts at anything from lowering costs to boosting value, boosting quality. We can address capacity concerns. We might need to move people to different roles or hire. We might need to split up a team or combine teams. And we can really tackle complexity in a way that we haven't been able to before because we're able to see it more effectively. And we're able to see the big picture, the whole picture, not just what's happening inside the CI/CD pipeline. And this can all be supported by automation. So if you're still convinced that you need tools for everything, we have value stream management solutions that will actually instrument the full lead time, the full scope of everything that's happening in the value stream. And so you can sort of continuously monitor the performance of a value stream and track things like quality over time, which allows you to address concerns before they're problems. And that can be really powerful. This is where the industry is really heading. So the idea behind value stream management versus value stream mapping is that value stream management is really kind of the continuous improvement of a value stream. And a lot of people will say that, it's a tool that manages the value stream, but really it's the practice of managing the performance and the quality of the value stream. So I've talked a lot about value. We might as well address it in the talk, right? This for me is kind of personal because I spent a lot of time as an engineer, a lot of time building code that didn't end up being very valuable. And it was always kind of a shock until I learned to ask the right questions, learned to kind of look at the big picture, and learned to see my work in terms of the value stream, that I could get stuck building the wrong thing or spending too much time on something that wasn't delivering the right amount of value. So I think it's really important to think about value beyond cost and effort and time and quality. It really is whatever your customer wants, right? And we want to deliver as much of what our customers want as possible. But it's also not that simple. There's a few different ways where value isn't just your external customer or even your internal customer, if you're using that as a frame, but there's value to company, right? Value to your business could be satisfying regulations or making sure that you don't have security breaches or ensuring a certain level of quality that you have a reputation for. And then you have employee value. So we want to make sure that employees are enjoying their work, they're stimulated, they're motivated, they're self-actualizing and they're growing. So training is something that's valuable to employees. And it's valuable to the business and to customers indirectly. But I think thinking in terms of who is this valuable for and what is the value is really important. So it's important to think of the value stream and the work that we're doing as what is the value that we're actually delivering here? Where is it? How are we actually delivering that value to customers? And how are we adding value with everything that we do? We can look at different steps and activities in the value stream and ask, how is this adding value? Or what value is being added here? Because that's an easy way to either improve the value or get rid of the activity or figure out some other way to do it more effectively. And the value of mapping specifically is an incredible ability. When you actually map the value stream and you see the big picture and you see how all of this comes together, you're able to make really quick decisions about things that you could do tomorrow to tackle the low-hanging fruit, all of the things that are obvious that you just didn't see before because either you've been busy with your head down working, or you've never had the perspective of the entire value stream or the information from all the different stakeholders or people building and delivering, that you realize things that are very obvious in retrospect. Now that you can see them, they're easy to tackle and you can actually do something about them. So what's pretty common, I've checked this with many, many people who've done, basically everyone who's ever done value stream mapping that I've met. And we all find that when you map a current state value stream map, when you map out your software delivery flow, 20% of the flow can be tackled and improved almost immediately, like overnight. And it's because we don't regularly step away and look at what we're doing. But when we do and we measure, we find these opportunities that are right there for us. So that brings me to flow. Flow to me is the scale, the continuous aspect of this work, the mode that we can get into when we're thinking of organizations in terms of value streams that facilitates that flow of value, the continuous delivery of value. And the reason that this is really important right now is that we still often think of organizations in terms of org charts, right? This static, almost like an architectural diagram that doesn't change very often unless there's a super disruptive reorganization. And in reality, what happens is that delivering value means that we bounce all over the organization, right? We're going through all kinds of different departments and there's all kinds of different stakeholders involved. And then it eventually makes it to a customer. But really what we should be striving for and what we're seeing with stream-aligned teams and platform teams, if you recognize those terms from team topologies, is that we're building teams now to facilitate flow. We're building teams along value streams so that there's a clear path from what we want to do to delivering value to our customers. And that means all of this gets simpler, all of this gets easier to understand, all of this gets much better. But that's going to take time. What it really allows us to do, though, is reorganize our organizations and think of our organizations in terms of how are we building these streams into each other, the flow of value through different streams and different streamlined teams to ultimately deliver the best value to customers. And you might recognize this format from something called Wardley mapping, but This is a depiction of a value chain map. This is a chain of value streams. This is a chain of capabilities that allow us to see the organization in terms of the flow of value out to customers. And it's showing this interplay between things like product and sales and platforms, because as we evolve and as we're getting better at building and delivering software, we're seeing that there's a lot of overlap here. There's a lot of collaboration that can and should be happening between things like sales and development and sales and product, and obviously sales and marketing. But thinking in terms of flow means that all of this is less throwing things over the wall and more flow through the organization. And this is all now coming together because of a lot of attention paid towards looking beyond DevOps. You know, we've hit a level with DevOps where it's working pretty well. For people who are doing it properly, it's really delivering incredible results. And it's time to look beyond DevOps. It's time to look at what is the next thing. The next thing is the big picture. It's the picture beyond dev and ops to the entire organization. And we're starting now with DevOps to adopt things like value stream management. But really what's going to happen with value stream management is touching every part of the organization, looking at the flow of value through the entire organization, not just the DevOps pipeline. So between now and 2023, we're going to see a huge uptick in adoption of value stream management for DevOps. But I think that we're also going to start to see it across the entire organization to encompass things like sales and marketing and success. And that's really exciting, right? It's going to make working inside of an organization and finding your place and how you contribute and how the whole thing works together a lot simpler and a lot clearer. So to sum up, hopefully I've taken you on an entertaining tour of these 5 points. I hope that you have seen a lot of value in this. I hope you've seen how we can use these techniques like value streams, value stream mapping, value stream management to address our complexity, waste, and friction concerns and tackle them through clarity, value, and flow. And that's what I call value stream thinking. That's what I'm obsessed with. And I'm spending a lot of time and a lot of really great conversations with folks who are involved in this, excited about this, and to help out, to contribute something back to the conversation, I've created this book called Flow Engineering, which outlines my techniques for mapping and bringing teams together to talk about flow and to talk about value streams and to make these improvements, to do this mapping, to find these bottlenecks, and then find those insights that are going to make a difference. And I would love it if you would download the book from flow.visible.is and reach out to me and let me know if you're starting to use these mapping techniques, if you're starting to tackle streamline teams and platforms. I would love to have conversations with you. I'd love to answer any questions. So you can reach out to me at steve@visible.is. Check out my site at visible.is as well. And thank you very much for joining me on this journey of value streams. And I hope you really enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks. Hey, folks. So I hope you got a lot of value from that presentation. I am available to answer any questions. We've had a lot of great questions in the chat. So thank you very much, everybody, for jumping in and asking while the session was going on. I'm going to kick us off just checking the Q&A section. Feel free to dump questions in the chat, but in the Q&A section, there was a question about how can I convince my boss to map a value stream? This is a classic. I mean, how do we convince our bosses to do anything, right? But let's say you're interested in this and it's not something that you currently do, but you'd like to give it a shot.
it's going to work well if you can get a bunch of different people involved, right? If you can get your immediate team, great. But if you can get the actual value stream stakeholders, which means some kind of executive sponsor, someone who can make changes to the process and help them stick and maybe support some change. But also, you want participants from across the value stream, which might involve marketing or sales or legal. And gathering all these people up is kind of challenging to do unless you've got some really high level support. So I think sharing a initial value stream map, like a very rough illustration of here's what I'd like to look at, here's what I'd like to really understand, can go a long way towards getting that buy-in or even starting a conversation with senior leadership, right? If you can illustrate your perspective of the value stream and say, here are the parts that I understand really well, and I have a few ideas about where our biggest opportunities are here, but then there's this cloudy area here, maybe in like product planning or program management, maybe in some other department like legal or regulatory compliance. And then maybe downstream, you've got like marketing and sales. I don't know what they do, but I know they're always complaining about getting access to testing environments too late to take screenshots for documentation or whatever else it is. You could sort of illustrate the value stream and show these areas are gray spots for me. I think it would really help all of us if we understood them better. And I've got an idea about how to do that. It's going to be a couple of hours. You might want to reach out to facilitators inside the organization. Maybe you've got an agile coach who's done value stream mapping before. Maybe you've read about it and you understand how to run the sessions. And it really is a basic structure. If you're starting from scratch, you can just cover the basics and get value from it. So I would advise you to pitch something small, start small, show some results, even if it's that everybody came away from the meeting and they felt like they understood things a lot better. That's fantastic, right? That could be a very positive outcome. But ideally, if you've got the measurement there, if you're collecting this data from people and you're able to highlight some hotspots, what happens is when I run these sessions and people sort of come away, they always mention to me, this is the first time I've ever been able to see everything from start to finish. Or in the case of some of these other roles like marketing or legal, they're always saying like, this is the first time I've ever actually met these people or like sat in a room with these people. This is the first time we've ever collaborated on anything. And I think that that's very powerful. That's something that's a very positive byproduct of this. And you don't get it from value stream management software. You don't get it from any kind of tool. You get it from coming together. So if you are having a hard time convincing your boss, send me an email, steve@visible.is, and I would love to talk to you about different strategies. I'll even draft you up an email that you could send off, because I think that that's really important. I've got a question from Stan. Rephrasing my question, my enterprise uses a tool that globally reviews very similar metrics over all teams. It lacks the coaching mechanism unless a manager injects based on bench lines. I'm assuming it's like benchmarks between the teams, right? If you notice a gap, if you notice something popping up, then that's an opportunity to kind of intervene, right? Do you think the tools that automate this process over a large breadth of teams is valuable, or do you think that there's higher value from having skilled value stream practitioners to build our more team-specific flows? If you do the latter, how do you scale that solution over a large enterprise? This is a fantastic question. I love this question because this is where the rubber meets the road. Something like a value stream management software is going to give you that horizontal view in an automated way very effectively. And eventually, if it doesn't right now, it's going to pop up and tell you you're trending in the wrong direction, or it seems like work is piling up in this specific place. It doesn't do anything to help you kind of fix the problem, right? It's just highlighting problems. So the value stream mapping exercise, one of the most important things that I didn't mention here, because it's deeper in value stream mapping, is future state mapping and ideal state mapping. And that's where you get a dramatically improved process from. So you map the current state, but then you actually step away from that and say, what would this look like if we could redesign it from scratch? And that's the opportunity for innovation that a tool's not going to give you. That's tapping into the collective understanding of everybody in the session and allowing them to be creative and reimagine things. And it doesn't have to be realistic. It's fine if it's not realistic, because immediately after the ideal state, we do the future state map, which is what can we actually do in the next 3 to 6 months? So that is something that no tool is going to really help you with in the near future. Nothing that I've heard of will do something like that, but a collaborative workshop will do. And so that opportunity to kind of step away from the work, come together and tackle a specific problem or reason about a target outcome is a very powerful thing that tools don't really help you with, right? I mean, we all have tools for retrospectives, but retrospectives are best done when they're facilitated by a human, right? A tool doesn't give us the best results, at least not for now. So I think that there's a real opportunity for having both and using the strengths, leveraging the strengths of both. Management is going to give you that steady tracking and maybe anomaly detection, maybe trend analysis, but mapping is really where you bring the team together. Everybody feels like they understand more about what's going on. You sort of have a point in time where everyone can head off in a new direction. All that's very hard to capture in kind of a tool. But as far as rolling this across the enterprise, here's what I advise. According to team topologies and modern kind of team structures in organizations, there's this pattern of an enabling team. And an enabling team in team topologies means something a little bit different than my interpretation of the opportunity. But a enabling team is basically something like me, but inside the organization. So they come into teams, they work with teams to map. They're really good at mapping. They're really good at visualizing and understanding value streams. They have that view across different teams about what the specific common pain points are. So they can say, yeah, I've seen this everywhere. It's definitely a problem for everyone. We can solve it for everyone centrally, perhaps, right? Maybe we can feed all the birds with one scone by fixing this problem centrally. That is something that's not going to happen through a tool. And really what we're talking about with a facilitating team, I call it a flow engineering team. They can hop around every single team in the company. If you have 150 teams, you would still be under mapping. You'd still be mapping once a quarter, right? But you're not mapping each individual. You don't necessarily need to map each individual team. You can also teach the teams to map. So you could get your scrum masters to be doing the mapping on a regular basis internally at a retro every quarter. And then you could be training those people on a regular basis and updating their skills. So there's a lot of ways that you can sort of scale this and not just have one person kind of hopping around. But even for one person to hop around, like a lot of these sessions are 2-hour sessions, is very easy to pack in. You know, I can churn through an 80,000 person company in much less than 3 months. And then they can do it themselves. They can take over from where I am, because you can record all these sessions. You can take notes on the process. And then it's fairly easy if you've got facilitation or coaching experience to run things like this. Awesome. Thanks, Sam. It's an excellent, excellent question. First place I heard about value streams was in the DevOps handbook. Yes, that was a great spot for it. It's been around for a very long time, but that I think was one of the first places that it was applied to software. There was principles of product development flow, and I think lean software engineering from the Poppendykes also talk about it. They're great. But Canton mentions that it wasn't hard making the map, but also finding the times between the steps. Collecting the data can be challenging, and having the right people in the room can be challenging. but you know that if you don't have the measurement, that's a measurement. That's one of the great things, is that if you don't have a good idea about how long something takes, then that's a hotspot. That's a problem. That's a problem that you can tackle. So I like that about it, is that if we don't actually understand how long something takes, or we don't really know how to build the map, that's a sign that you need to pay attention to this. So it's kind of a nice signal. All right, I think I'm probably over time now. I'm well over time. So I'm going to jump. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference. I'm around for direct messages. You can shoot me any messages, and jump out to my website for more information. But thanks very much for the time. I really appreciate it.